Have you ever shared an idea in English and someone said, interesting? And you thought, oh, great, they think my idea is interesting. But then they didn't ask any follow up questions. They didn't seem excited. And they maybe even looked a little uncomfortable. And suddenly you wondered, wait, was that good or bad? Today, we're talking about one of the most confusing parts of real life English: hidden meanings. Because in American English, people do not always say exactly what they mean. Sometimes interesting means interesting, but sometimes it means I'm not sure about that. That sounds a little strange. I disagree, but I'm trying to be polite. Or even, wow, that is not a good idea. I know, English is fun, right? I'm Gabby from Go Natural English, and in this episode, you'll learn what Americans really mean when they say interesting. We'll see. That's bold and good for you. These phrases are short, simple, and common, but the meaning depends on tone, facial expression, and context. And by the end of this episode, you'll be able to understand the hidden message behind these phrases so you don't misread the situation. Okay, let's decode some American English. Here's the problem. Many American learners study dictionary meanings, and dictionary meanings are important. But this is why I say don't translate, because real communication is not just words. Real communication is tone, timing, facial expression, relationship, context, what people say and what people don't say. For example, imagine you tell a coworker, I think we should completely redesign the whole project by tomorrow. And your coworker says, interesting. That probably does not mean, wow, what a fascinating and wonderful idea. It might mean, I don't think that's realistic. I'm surprised you suggested that. I need a second to respond politely. Or, I disagree, but I'm not going to say that directly. This is called indirect communication. Americans can be direct in some situations, but in social and professional situations, we often soften our reactions. So instead of saying, that's a bad idea, we might say, interesting. Instead of saying, no, that's not going to happen, we might say, we'll see. Instead of saying, that's risky, we might say, that's bold. Instead of saying, I would never do that, but okay, we might say, good for you. So today we're not just learning vocabulary, we're learning social meaning. And this is a high-level fluency skill because advanced English is not just understanding the words, it's understanding the situation. So first let's start with the big phrase, interesting. Now, of course, sometimes interesting really does mean interesting. For example, that documentary was really interesting. This article is interesting, or she made an interesting point. In these examples, the tone is usually positive or neutral. But when someone says interesting with a pause, a raised eyebrow, or a flat voice, it can mean something different. It might mean, I'm not sure I agree. That's unexpected. That's a little strange. I need more information. Or I don't know what to say. I don't really know what I think yet. Listen to the difference. That's interesting. It's positive, curious, engaged. Interesting. Careful, unsure, maybe skeptical. The tone is more flat. Can you hear the difference? Here's an example. You say, I think we should cancel the meeting and just send everyone a 20-page document instead. Your coworker says, interesting. That probably means I don't love that idea. A more direct response would be, I'm not sure that would work, but interesting gives them time to think and keep the conversation polite. Now, what should you say if someone says interesting and you're not sure what they mean? You can follow up with interesting good or interesting bad. Or do you mean that in a good way? Or what are your initial thoughts? Does that seem realistic to you? Would you approach it differently? These are great phrases because they invite honesty without sounding defensive. Repeat after me. Interesting good or interesting bad? Do you mean that in a good way? What are your initial thoughts? Would you approach it differently? Great. Now let's hear how this sounds more naturally in conversation. The person A. I'm thinking about quitting my job and starting a business next month. Person B. Interesting. Person A. Interesting good or interesting scary? Person B. A little of both, honestly. I think it could be exciting, but I'd want to make sure you have a plan first. Did you hear that? Person A didn't get offended. They didn't panic. They just clarified the meaning. And that's a powerful communication skill. Instead of assuming, they asked. And this is something native speakers do too. Interesting good or interesting scary? That phrase is casual, warm, and very useful. The next phrase is we'll see or we will see. This one is very important. English learners often hear will see and think it means maybe yes. And technically, yes, it can mean maybe. But culturally, in American English, will see often means probably not or no. Parents say this to children all the time. A child might ask, "Can we get ice cream?" And the parent will say, "We'll see." Here's the real translation, the real meaning. Probably not, but I don't want to argue right now. In dating, friendships, or work, "we'll see" can also mean I don't want to commit, I'm avoiding saying no, or I'm not sure. Or maybe this depends on something else. For example, "Can you come to my party this weekend?" We'll see. That might mean I don't know yet, but it might also mean I probably won't come. Or at work. At work, "Do you think we can launch this by Friday?" We'll see. That means it's uncertain. Or I don't want to promise that. Now, "we'll see" is not rude. It's just not committal or non-committal. Non-committal means not clearly saying yes or no. Repeat after me. Non-committal. Good. If you want to respond naturally, you can say totally, just let me know. Or no pressure, just keep me posted. Sounds good. We can play it by ear. Okay, let's see how things go. These phrases are relaxed and natural. The phrasal verb here is to play it by ear. To play something by ear means to decide later, depending on the situation. For example, "We don't have a firm plan. Let's just play it by ear." Repeat, "We'll play it by ear." "Let's see how things go." "Just keep me posted." Great. The next phrase is "that's bold." So now let's talk about this one. That's bold. This one is fun. Bold can be positive. It means brave, confident, strong, or not afraid to stand out. For example, "That's a bold career move." "That's a bold outfit." "That's a bold idea." But depending on tone, "that's bold" can also mean "that's risky." "That's surprising." "I wouldn't do that." "That might be too much." Or even, "Wow, you really went there." The phrase "you really went there" means you said or did something intense, personal, controversial, or unexpected. For example, imagine someone says at a family dinner, "I think we should all talk about who is the favorite child." And someone says, "Wow, that's bold." That means that's a risky thing to say at dinner. Or imagine your coworker says, "I told the boss the whole system is broken and we need new leadership." You might say, "That's bold," which means that was brave, but maybe dangerous. So "that's bold" can be admiration, warning, surprise, or polite criticism. You need to listen to the tone. "That's bold." Positive, excited, impressed. That's bold. Careful, surprised, maybe judgmental. Notice how the tone stays flat. If someone says "that's bold" to you and you're not sure how they meant it, you can say "bold good" or "bold risky." Too much? "Do you think I went too far?" Is that a little too direct? These are natural follow-up questions. Repeat after me. Bold good or bold risky? Too much? Do you think I went too far? Is that a little too direct? Excellent. Next, and this one is a little tricky. Good for you. Sometimes it's genuinely positive. For example, I finally started exercising again. Good for you. That means I'm happy for you. I'm proud of you. That's great. But good for you can also sound sarcastic or dismissive. Sarcastic means the words sound positive, but the real meaning is negative. Dismissive means the person is not really interested or is brushing you off. To brush someone off means to ignore them, dismiss them, or not take them seriously. For example, I only fly first class now. I just can't travel economy anymore. Good for you. The meaning of this is, okay, that's nice for you, but I don't really relate to that. Or, I wake up at 4 a.m. every day, run 10 miles, meditate for an hour, and never eat sugar. Good for you. And that means that's impressive, but also maybe a little bit too much. The key is tone. Good for you. That's warm, happy, and supportive. Good for you. Flat, dry, maybe sarcastic. If you want to say it positively, add warmth. Say, that's amazing. Good for you. Wow, good for you. That takes discipline. I'm really happy for you. That's awesome. You should be proud. Those extra words make the meaning clear. Repeat after me. That's amazing. Good for you. I'm really happy for you. You should be proud. That takes discipline. Beautiful. Okay, let's talk about the next phrase. That's different. So this phrase is similar. It often means that's unusual. I'm not sure I like it. That's not what I expected. For example, you show someone your new bright green sofa. They say, oh, that's different. It does not always mean they love it. It might mean I don't know what to say. Another similar phrase is, that's one way to do it. This can mean I wouldn't do it that way. For example, you cut a cake with a spoon. And someone says, well, that's one way to do it, which means that's not the usual way. These phrases are funny because they sound neutral, but they often carry judgment. Not always, but often. So useful phrases to clarify are different good or different bad or different weird. Be honest. Do you like it? Would you have done it another way? Is that too much? So repeat after me. Different good or different weird? Be honest. Do you like it? Would you have done it another way? Is that too much? Great job. Okay, now let's talk about phrasal verbs. These will help you figure out hidden meanings. First, to pick up on. To pick up on something means to notice something subtle. For example, I picked up on her tone. She didn't say no directly, but I picked up on the hesitation. Repeat, I picked up on her tone. Next, to read into. To read into something means to look for a deeper meaning, sometimes too much. For example, am I reading too much into this, or did he sound annoyed? Repeat, am I reading too much into this? Next, to brush off. To brush someone off means to dismiss or ignore them. For example, when I asked for feedback, he brushed me off and said, we'll see. Repeat, he brushed me off. To back up. To back up means to support your point with more information. For example, if someone says, interesting, you can back up your idea with examples. Repeat, let me back that up with an example. Next, to tone down. To tone something down means to make it less strong, less intense, or less direct. For example, that comment sounded too harsh, so I toned it down. Repeat, I toned it down. Great. So our 5 phrasal verbs today are to pick up on, to read into, to brush off, to back up, and to tone down. These are very useful when you're talking about communication, tone, and social situations. Now, here's a big cultural communication tip. Don't only listen to the words, listen to the energy. This is huge. When someone says interesting, ask yourself, did they sound excited, confused, uncomfortable, flat, curious, judgmental? When someone says, we'll see, ask, are they truly considering it, or are they avoiding saying no? When someone says, that's bold, ask, are they impressed, or are they warning me? When someone says, good for you, ask, do they sound warm or dry and sarcastic? In American English, tone can completely change the meaning. Here's a simple example. Good for you. That sounds supportive. Good for you. That might sound dismissive. Same words, different tone, different meaning. And this is why fluency is not just grammar. Fluency is emotional intelligence in another language, and that's a big deal. Now, what should you do if you don't understand the hidden meaning? You don't need to panic, but you can ask a light, friendly follow-up question. Here are some great options. Do you mean that in a good way? Can you say more about that? What makes you say that? Are you thinking that might not work? Is that a yes, no, or a maybe? Should I read between the lines here? To read between the lines means to understand the hidden meaning. For example, she said, we'll see, but I read between the lines. She probably meant no. So repeat after me. Do you mean that in a good way? Can you say more about that? What makes you say that? Is that a yes, no, or maybe? Should I read between the lines here? Excellent. These phrases help you stay in the conversation instead of freezing. Remember, fluency is not perfect grammar. Fluency is staying in the conversation. Now let's practice with a natural conversation. Listen first. I'm thinking about asking my boss if I can work remotely from another country for 3 months. Interesting. Interesting good or interesting risky? A little risky. I mean, it could work, but you'd probably need to back it up with a really clear plan. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't want it to sound random. Exactly. Maybe tone it down a little and start by asking about flexible work options. That's helpful. So instead of making a huge request right away, I can ease into it. Exactly. Now let's look at what happened. Person B said interesting, but person A didn't assume. They asked interesting good or interesting risky. Then person B gave more honest feedback. And notice the phrasal verbs. Back it up to support the idea with a plan. Tone it down. Make it less intense. Ease into it. Start slowly. This is a bonus phrasal verb today, to ease into. To ease into something means to begin gradually. For example, don't ask for everything immediately. Ease into the conversation. Repeat. Ease into it. Great. Now let's practice key phrases. Repeat after me. Interesting good or interesting bad? Do you mean that in a good way? What are your initial thoughts? We'll see. Let's play it by ear. Keep me posted. That's bold. Bold good or bold risky? Do you think I went too far? Good for you. I'm really happy for you. That's different. Different good or different weird? Should I read between the lines here? Can you say more about that? Great job. Okay, let's practice with emotion. Say this with curiosity. Interesting. Now say it with excitement. That's interesting. Now say it with hesitation. Interesting. Do you feel the difference? Your tone tells the listener what you really mean. And when you listen to native speakers, their tone helps you understand what they really mean. Let me tell you a quick story. Years ago, I was sharing a business idea with someone I respected. I was excited. I had this whole plan and I thought it was creative. I thought it was smart. I thought, this is going to be amazing. And after I explained everything, the person said, interesting. And I remember thinking, great, they think it's interesting. So I kept talking and talking and talking, but their face didn't look excited. Their voice didn't sound excited. They weren't asking questions like, how are you going to do that? Or what's the next step? They just kept saying, interesting. And finally, I realized, oh, they didn't mean interesting like amazing. They meant interesting like I'm not convinced. And honestly, I felt a little embarrassed. But that moment taught me something important. Sometimes people are giving us feedback in a very indirect way. And if we can pick up on it, we can respond better. Now, instead of assuming, I might say, interesting good or interesting concerning. Or what part gives you pause? That phrase is excellent. What gives you pause? It means what makes you hesitate or what concerns you, what makes you unsure. Repeat, what gives you pause? This is a very advanced natural phrase, and it works beautifully in professional conversations. So let's review. Interesting can mean that's fascinating, but it can also mean I'm unsure, I disagree, or that's strange, or maybe I need more time to respond. We'll see can mean maybe, but often means probably not. I don't want to commit, or it depends. That's bold can mean brave and impressive, but it can also mean risky, too direct, unexpected, or I would not have done it like that. Good for you can mean I'm happy for you, but with a flat or dry tone, it can mean that's nice for you, but I don't really relate. That's different can mean unique, but it can also mean I'm not sure I like it. And a big lesson here today is don't just translate the words. Decode the situation. Listen to tone. Look at facial expression. Notice the pause. Think about the relationship. When you're not sure, ask. If you remember one thing from this episode, remember this. In English, words are only part of the message. The real meaning comes from tone, facial expression, context, and the relationship between the speakers. So when someone says interesting, don't automatically assume they mean that's amazing. They might mean I'm not sure, I disagree, that surprised me, or I need a second to respond politely. When someone says we'll see, they might mean maybe, but they might also mean probably not, I don't want to commit, or I'm avoiding a direct no. When someone says that's bold, they might mean that's brave, but they might also mean that's risky, that's a little too direct, or I would not have done that. And when someone says good for you, they might genuinely mean I'm happy for you. But with a flat or dry tone, it can mean that's nice for you, but I don't really relate. So your job is not to panic. Your job is to stay curious. You can always ask, do you mean that in a good way? Can you say more about that? What makes you say that? Should I read between the lines here? And that is real fluency. Not perfect grammar, no perfect pronunciation. It's okay if you make a mistake. Just keep going and improve each time. Staying in the conversation and understanding what people really mean is the most important. And in the next episode tomorrow, we're going to talk about how to sound more interesting in English. Because today we decoded the word interesting. But next time I'll show you how to actually be more interesting in conversation, how to tell better stories, give better answers, and keep people engaged when you speak English. Because you don't need perfect English to be interesting. You need connection, you need details, you need emotion, and you need the confidence to keep going. So again, I'm Gabby from Go Natural English, and thank you so much for learning with me. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.